let's dive deeper into Clemson's win over Wake Forest. So Clemson starts off really ugly. They're down 7-0. It's actually the first score of any sort they've allowed in the first quarter. The first time they trailed in any first quarter, if you think about it, it was 0-0 against Georgia. So it was, I don't want to say dicey, but it was rocky, perhaps. Not ideal, for sure. And really, it wasn't. I mean, I want to give credit to Wake. They did some good things on offense, some really tight window throws by Hank Bachmeier, and some really good runs by Damon Claiborne, who's a really, really good running back. So credit to them. I thought their defense was okay at the beginning, but really it wasn't about them, in my opinion. It was more about Clemson and Cade Klubnik kind of playing poorly. So he had 5 missed throws that I just counted in the first half. Most of those early, most of those in the either first 2 drives or at least the first quarter for the most part. But he had an overthrow and an underthrow to Stellato, the same to Briningstool, and then he had a 5th. I don't remember. I think it was an overthrow to TJ Moore. The overthrow to Troy Stellato was a wide open slant that perhaps maybe it definitely goes for 8 or 9, but I think maybe goes for like 20, and he just fired it way over his head. So he was really inaccurate early, but he settled in, and from that point, Clemson dominated. I thought that domination was apropos because this was Clemson and Wake Forest 73rd consecutive meeting. And, most of those are Clemson getting resounding victories. Clemson's beat Wake more than any other ACC opponent. And now with the expansion of the conference, they won't be playing every year. So they will not play in 2025. It's going to break a really long streak of the 2 teams facing off. And perhaps, playing a lot doesn't make it like history in a meaningful an interesting way. It's Wake Forest, but it's kind of weird. It was weird to me, and I disliked not having Georgia Tech on the schedule this year. I really wish Georgia Tech would have been a permanent rival. Frankly, I would have rather seen that than Florida State, but I have my Atlanta biases. Wake Forest probably didn't deserve to be one, but it is weird. It's really, really weird to not see them on future schedules. They'll start being something like every other year. So they don't play them next year. So it's just fitting that it was a clear majority. They said 60-40 on TV, and they never say stuff like that on TV. They said it was 60-40 Clemson fans in a legacy field in Winston-Salem. And by the end of the game, it was like 90-10 Clemson fans. It was a 49-14 win. Coach Sweeney has never lost to Wake Forest. The last time a Clemson coach lost to Wake Forest, Tommy Bowden was fired. So 16 in a row. That's a record for Clemson, and it's a record for either school in the head-to-head matchup. So, I'm not going to over celebrate or blow up exactly what happened, because I don't think Wake Forest is good. If you're watching the live stream, then you just watched the ACC Power Rankings where Wake was in the bottom couple of teams. I don't think they're very good, particularly on defense. But once Cade Klubnik settled down, this offense became pretty much unstoppable. Bryant Westco was out, which was kind of a concern. I mean, not as much because of the opponent, but it was disappointing, and hopefully he's back soon. Because I think he really opens up some of those deep, explosive plays, and they really weren't there in this game. I don't necessarily think it was just because he was out, because, TJ Moore is certainly capable of that. But this was more about surgically picking them apart. So the starters in the game, tight ends Briningstool, and the wide receiver starters were Stellato, Antonio Williams, and TJ Moore. And those 4 players, including the tight end, they had 23 receptions for 291 yards. They had no receptions over 30 yards. So not super explosive, but really, really efficient. Basically, they did in this game what they tried to do last year, where they weren't attacking deep, but they tried to be efficient. They couldn't do it last year. This year, they've been explosive. And in this game, they weren't super explosive, but they were very, very efficient. And so that's really the first time we've seen that this year. And we wanted to see the explosiveness, right? That's what we needed. But in a way, it's good to see that they can also score in different ways, right? If they take the deep ball away, we'll pick you apart. And after they picked him apart a while, that's when Phil Moffitt just went off. He kind of got gummed up early. And I wonder how much of that is their defense adjusting versus I think he gets better as the game goes on. I think Moffitt really needs a couple carries to really hit a stride. And then he looks amazing. He's lowering his shoulder, knocking guys over. Really, really physical runner. I love Maffa. I know a lot of guys loved Shipley and thought he'd be a big loss when he was gone. I think Shipley is a good player, and this is not at all a criticism of him. But I think shifting some of his carries to Maffa makes the running back room more productive, because I think Maffa works better for this offense. Just love seeing Moff out there as much as he is. And then Jay Haynes is a good number 2 back. And I got to give some love to Keith Adams Jr. I thought Keith Adams Jr. was really good. I mean, limited carries, but he's really physical, just as much as Maffa, maybe even more so. And I could see next year, perhaps, him and Jay Haynes is kind of a thunder lightning duo, with him being more short yardage and Jay Haynes being a legitimate starting running back. And I'm not worried about that. I think that duo is actually okay. I was pretty concerned when those guys came in as recruits that they were lower stars, really because we kind of missed on other guys. But I like what I'm seeing from those two, and I think they could be offensive line stay strong. And it sounds like most of this offensive line will be back. So I like the future of this running back room too. And speaking of the running backs, Maffa had a 22-yard run. That was his long. But the most exciting one was actually a 2-yard run. It was when Clemson went to the heavy package for the first time all year. And it was funny because Sweeney had been asked about the heavy package and said it was top secret. So I don't know if he planned it. I mean, it's really the situation just has to come up. But it did come up. And Capehart and Woods were the 2 defensive linemen who came in. So Woods goes to the outside. And, well, I guess first is Capehart goes to the inside and sort of seals the edge. And then Maffa runs around to the left. Guys coming from the outside to take him. And Peter Woods lays a perfect block. And Maffa just runs perfectly between Peter Woods and DeMonte Capehart for the touchdown, untouched. I mean, it's perfect. It's exactly what you want on that package. And those 2 were awesome in it. So maybe we'll see that more. Then defensively, Peter Woods and DeMonte Capehart were also awesome. I thought they just dominated up front. I think Woods is finally looking healthy. I miss him being in the middle, but this was, in my opinion, his best game as defensive end. Claiborne, who I gave some credit to before, he looked good early, but they pretty quickly figured it out and shut him down. He ended up with only 2.9 yards per carry on the game overall. Taylor Marin, who is their leading receiver, or was at least coming in, I think still is, he was limited to 9 yards. So really elite play by Avion Terrell and Jalen Lucas. I saw some people online saying that Jalen Lucas was struggling. I don't think so. I think Terrell's the star for sure, but I think Jalen Lucas is great. I think that's an incredible duo. And then on top of them, you had the safeties, Khalil Barnes and Kylon Griffin, each had an interception. So excellent play by those 4. I will acknowledge that, I don't know if they're reserves or nickels, but Koval and Shelton Lewis got picked on. I've noticed Lewis picked on in prior games, hadn't noticed it for Koval, but it was a couple times in this game, and we got to be fair and acknowledge that. The interception by Barnes was on a deflection where the throw was off, and the receiver hit off the receiver, and Barnes scooped it right before it hit the ground. But the receiver had beat Koval on that play. It was, I don't know if it was a slant or an in, but he was running across. And there was a window. The quarterback missed it, but there was a window because he had a step on Koval. So a little bit to clean up there, but this defense allowed 14 yards, right? So that's really impressive. So before we start looking, well, maybe this is looking ahead a little bit, but before we shift gears to Virginia, I do want to talk about Cade Klubnik. So he had 309 yards in this game. He's up to 1,528 yards. He has a really, really nice 17-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Really, really impressive there. And it's honestly, I know the schedule's weak, but that's good enough to get into the Heisman discussion at least a little bit. So let's start. Let's kind of kick that off a little bit briefly here. Cam Ward has 2,200 yards and deserves to be ahead of him. Fine. And then you got Dylan Gabriel for Oregon. He just beat Ohio State. Big time showcase kind of game. And Jalen Milroe for Alabama. I'm a fan of Milroe. They're going to play bigger, tougher opponents. Milroe beat Georgia. Gabriel beat Ohio State. Clemson hopefully will be able to say they beat Pitt, right? Perhaps if Miami could run the table, maybe they'll play Miami, and that'll be kind of the Cam Ward versus Klubnik showcase. And then maybe Klubnik has a little bit more chance there. But, you're talking like 3 guys that I think are probably decisively ahead of him. After that, you got Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, but Colorado lost to K-State. They've got 2 losses. They'll probably pick up 2 more. They very seldom give it to a non-quarterback. As amazing as Travis Hunter is, he's probably the most outstanding player, but they seldom will give it to a player like that. It's certainly not one on an 8-4 team. I think Louisville in 2016 when they sort of fell apart at the end of the year, but they had a lot of hype early. That may be one of the worst teams to actually have a Heisman winner on it. But he was by far the most outstanding player. I mean, he was amazing. He carried them. So Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, I think Klubnik might have an advantage. Quinn Ewers is awesome, but he missed several games, so he only has 890 yards, 9 touchdowns only, compared to Klubnik with 17 touchdowns, just because he's got more chance because he's been healthy. Carson Beck maybe is another who's ahead of him. He has 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks, and he did beat Klubnik head-to-head. Klubnik looked pretty bad in that game. So perhaps you have Ward, Gabriel, Milroe, Beck, Klubnik. Maybe those are the top 5. But look, man, the fact that I'm even able to talk about this after what happened against Georgia this year, and then as bad as Klubnik was like last year, that's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that. John said, a lot of the voters decide before the conference championship games, which is a huge shame, a huge shame. I remember back when I think it was the year that Lamar Jackson won, like a lot of the votes were already submitted before the championship game, which is, I think totally wrong. You can't do that. But hey, look, Clemson is in the discussion. And I think that's awesome. That's a treat. So kudos to Klubnik for his progress. So Clemson's got, looking ahead on the schedule, as we just talked about, what meat is left. I think you're looking at the 2 toughest games in the ACC, and South Carolina's, they battled Alabama. Let's be fair. They've battled some teams here. They almost beat LSU. They almost beat Alabama. I don't think they're going to beat Clemson, but maybe they can almost beat Clemson. So they're probably, it's at home. Pitt's on the road, so maybe Pitt's a little tougher. But I'd say Pittsburgh and South Carolina are the toughest games left, followed by Louisville because that one is at home. And I think South Carolina could be a hair better than Louisville. I'm not sure. You could tell me why I'm being too kind to the Gamecocks in the comments. So Louisville, Pittsburgh, toughest ACC games left, at least. Pitt 6-0 for the first time since 1982. But after their bye, they'll get Syracuse on a Thursday. Maybe they win that. It's at home, but I don't know. I think they lose to SMU after that. I think they'll beat Virginia, but I'm not sure. I mean, it's on the road in Scott Stadium. Louisville barely won there, so Pitt, Louisville are pretty close. And then they come to Clemson, so Pitt could really kind of hit a roadblock. Yeah, Kevin's being fair here. I think South Carolina's not bad. They might have 5 or 6 wins when they come to Clemson, but they've the SEC's tough, and they got a tougher draw. So playing LSU and Alabama in the same season is not the easiest. And then you have to go on the road to Clemson too. That's a really tough trio of games they got stuck with. So with that, let's talk about this upcoming weekend. Clemson will host the Virginia Cavaliers. They'll host Tony Elliott. And Virginia is 4-2. They just lost to Louisville, as we were saying. And they've improved. So let's give them some credit. They beat Richmond. And they beat Wake Forest on the road. Again, Wake Forest is not great, but they were down. They made a comeback to win a road ACC game, so we'll give them a little credit there. They battled Maryland. They were, I think they were up at halftime. They didn't score in the second half. They lose that game 27-13. That's actually a home game against Maryland, so not the best loss in the world there. They beat Coastal Carolina. They beat Boston College, and then they lose this weekend at home to Louisville. I think they're an okay-ish team. If I look at some of their statistics, Anthony Calandria is their starting quarterback, and he's got 1,490 yards. Pretty good total there. He has 9 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So obviously a pretty big disparity between him and Klubnik, who has 17 touchdowns to 2 picks. But he's a guy who can make things happen. He's averaging 7.7 yards per attempt to Klubnik's 8, not half bad, 64% completion percentage. I think he's decent. I think their decision to go with him over Musket up to their ceiling a lot. And then their starting running back is former Clemson running back Kobe Pace. He's got 71 carries for 331 yards, 4.7 yards per carry. We saw him at Clemson. He's a solid running back. Xavier Brown is there perhaps, I don't know, maybe more explosive. His stats certainly say he's more explosive. He only has 46 carries to Pace's 71 but he has 3 more yards, 7.3 yards per rushing attempt. So that duo will try to run the ball in Clemson. And Virginia's rushing offense is okay. They're 56th rushing, averaging 4.6 yards per rush attempt. That's 175 yards rushing per game. Really not great. They're a little bit better in passing, ranking 41st, averaging 260 yards passing per game. So that's pretty solid. Clemson's offense, you would, from watching, you would think Clemson's offense would be better than this. Clemson's offense, 25th in passing, 280 yards a game, 30th in rushing, 200 yards per game, 6 yards a carry though. So it's pretty efficient. Frankly, they've leaned pretty heavy on the pass, so the rushing is maybe a little understated. But the eye test doesn't really match up with that. The eye test is really impressive, and perhaps a lot of that is held down by that Georgia game. Even still, I mean, it is still 1/6 of all the contests that they've played. Flip it over to defense, and here's the interesting note. So Clemson's passing defense is only 56th. They've allowed 208 passing yards per game. I think we've kind of complained about that at times. The defense has been a lot of bend but don't break, especially in that Stanford game. So not nearly as dominant as they are at times and as they've been in the past. I think this is an opportunity to see, is that defense going to elevate? Is that defense going to elevate enough that they can win a playoff game if they have some home playoff game against a team like Tennessee, LSU, a good solid opponent, but maybe not like a Texas or a Georgia rematch, right? The defense will have to get better for them to do that. And I think that the rushing defense, maybe more than anything, needs to get better. They're only 65th, which that's not good, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's not good. Now, I think a lot of that is because of the defensive ends. Peter Woods was out. I think that they thought they had something a little bit more ready than they do at defensive end. And I want to call out this comment here because it was a good one. Jaheim Lawson's arrived too. Yeah, is a pass rusher. Jaheim Lawson's pretty good at defensive end. He's risen up. I think he's their sort of number 3. You got TJ Parker. You got Peter Woods. You got very little depth after that. It's probably Jaheim Lawson's the next best guy. So that is a credit to Lawson, but also a commentary on the lack of depth at defensive end. It's probably somewhere where they should have taken a transfer. Although I will acknowledge, as critical as I've been at times of Clemson not taking transfers, hearing some of Dave Clawson's comments about how you have to overpay to bring in a transfer and it brings so much discord to the locker room, it's almost not worth it. I think that combined with Dabo's very positive attitude towards paying the players at a more traditional salary with media sharing, as I think is the right thing to do, makes me a lot more optimistic and a lot more understanding of his hesitance to use the portal. Now, could they find a reserve defensive end who they wouldn't have to overpay? Yeah, and they probably should have. But it definitely seems a lot more. We're getting a more clear picture now, right? Dabo sometimes made some strange comments at times that made it, at least for me, a little bit harder to be sympathetic. He says, "Oh, the NIL. We have the name, image, and likeness of God," right? Like, I'm a pretty religious guy, but that's just a weird comment. Talking about our whole class is transfers. They're just transfers from high school. Like, what are you talking about, right? So some of the comments like that, I think, soured me, but hearing someone else kind of speak to the more specific challenges, Dave Clawson, that is, and then Dabo being so positive about the salary or media rights sharing kind of thing that's coming, has me optimistic and understanding. Let's see if there's any other. Yeah, until we show a better pass rush, I'll continue to be nervous with us facing gunslingers, and Calandry is a gunslinger, right? So if Clemson doesn't get home, they could move the ball. I think that's what Clemson's going to score their points, but kind of like the Wake Forest game, you knew Clemson would score, but it was Wake going to score and make it close. In the beginning of the game, you thought they might, and then they very much didn't. So hopefully this game goes a lot like the Wake game, except, even better start. And I will say, Wake should be better than Virginia should be better than Wake Forest. But let's not forget, they needed to come back to win by 1 at Wake Forest. So they're better than Wake, but are they way better than Wake? I don't think so. I think a similar outcome is very possible. So let's see a few final comments here. So Virginia's defense, I want to make sure we hit on this. The rush defense is actually quite good for 3.7 yards per carry. So they're going to make life tough on Maffa and the Clemson running game. I think Klubnik's legs can certainly help that, help the cause there. But in their pass defense, really, really poor. 111th nationally pass defense, giving up 260 yards per game. I think this one's going to be a lot like the Wake game where Klubnik picks them apart. If West goes back, let's hope that's not serious. Hopefully Tyler Brown can get healthy too. Maybe that's not till after the bye, but he hasn't played a ton. I think he's nursing some injuries. Really would love to get one or both back in this game. Let's see that explosiveness come back. But even if it doesn't, I think Clemson can pick them apart, and that'll eventually open up the running game for Klubnik, but more so for Maffa. And I think Clemson will pull away. I don't expect this one to be super close. It's a noon game ACC network, and I think it quickly proves that that's the network and time slot it deserves to be on, because I don't expect this one to be close. If it is, that's concerning. Clemson will usually go into a bye quite well. They sometimes will come out of a bye a little sloppy, but they'll go into a bye well. So I expect this one to go the Tigers' way. If you enjoyed this video, please help this channel by liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Also, if you're a pet owner and you live in the upstate, check out our sponsor, Ready Vets. They offer immediate walk-in care when your pet can't wait. They're open 7 days a week till 10 p.m. They're owned by 2 Clemson grads. They're located in Taylor's, just 10 miles from the Woodruff Road shopping district.